As mentioned, we're here with Mike from Unity and Matt from MaxPlay. Maybe to start off with, each of you take a few minutes and introduce yourselves and the engines that you're representing.
Again, my name is Matt Shaw. I've had a long sort of career in the game industry, working for everything back in the day in Kesmai to Electronic Arts for many years. Started at Mythic Entertainment, as part of BioWare, other things around EA. Worked on game engines ever since, well back before 3D graphics, I would mention it. How about now? Oh, that's better. Sorry. Should I start again? All right. Now the better version. My name is Matt Shaw. I am currently the CTO for MaxPlay, a company that makes basically a multiplayer collaborative game engine development system. We call it the MaxPlay GDS. Before that, I spent around 10 years or so working at Electronic Arts in various positions, both at BioWare and before that Mythic Entertainment and various things. I've been working on game engines and tools since way before 3D graphics or anything back before you wrote your own 3D graphics rasterizer, way back before hardware was in green. And that's largely me. Mike.
Hi. How are the cookies? My name is Mike Geig. I am an evangelist at Unity Technologies. I started as an indie game dev many years ago, mostly making government stuff, training simulators for firefighters and whatever. And then I worked a bit in education, and now I'm at Unity. I've been at Unity about 3 years. First as an online trainer. So if anyone who here has watched any of the online videos about Unity from our website. Sweet. So chances are you've seen my work or heard my voice. I'm the non-British guy. So from there I moved on to a trainer position where I travel out and visit customers and stuff. And now I'm an evangelist and do awesome events like this.
Okay, awesome. So the topic of this is choosing the right game engine for your project. What would each of you say are some of the non-obvious things that people should be asking themselves when evaluating a particular engine?
I'd say one question I have is really, it's very pertinent to what Mike and I were just talking about. Why don't we not tell you what you should be looking for a little bit? How about if we ask you folk what it is that you think you need in a project? Why would you choose an engine or not? We have our ideas, but what's really important is what you guys think. Artist friendly. So what does artist friendly mean? Okay. This is like great changes. Okay, understandable. Anyone else? If you don't say any more ideas, we're just going to tell you what you need.
Pipeline integration.
Pipeline integration. So, give me a little more detail on that.
Sure. So, I'm not going to build the entire game in the engine. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that has to fit into that. So, how well the engine integrates into either existing pipeline or other third-party tools or whatever other things that
I would want to. I just met Jen earlier, so I know her name.
That's your point.
quick, just so we can kind of tailor the conversation as well. Who here is developing for PC, Mac, desktop? All right, mobile, console.
All of the above. All of the above.
VR. I know it's probably all of those, but yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you. I'm sorry. FGL. Yeah, okay. That's all of the go. All I guess. I don't know what question.
But we're asking them what
Yeah.
they like to do for the project. Okay. All right. So I'll give you some ideas of what I think you might want. Everything you all mentioned is fantastic. Perfect. People definitely want things to work well. Like we're in a kind of unique situation in MaxPlay because we had I guess the word is luxury and hardship of coming in late and looking at how other engines work and seeing what we think works, what doesn't work. And so the kind of things that we concentrated more on, you touched on most of them right now, which is pipeline, being able to get artwork into the game well, reduce iteration, increase your ability to iterate quickly and see the artwork fast. One of the things that we hang our hat on is collaboration. That allows you to basically work on things at the same time with people, not have to basically save out work, put it in source control before someone else can see it. And it's all about workflow because time's money, as we know. And the better you make your pipelines and make your systems, we have people talk about us and go, well, okay, how much money do you save developing a game if you're using something with better tools? The answer is you don't save any money. You make a better product. And that's the part that, the things that we're trying to concentrate on. But there are, we also kind of look at the thing like in some ways that there's basically kind of a role-playing game to make a game. You have to make the product really good for every kind of developer, whether that's an engineer, an artist, someone who's doing the pipeline or build systems. They all have pain points, and so the more you can try to solve those, the better. But the bottom line is no engine is perfect at doing it.
Yeah. So, obviously, we see so many games anymore. Games are everywhere, which, you could extrapolate that means it might be a little bit easier to make them all the way around than it used to be. Absolutely. And so one of the things that, myself personally, I value a lot is these simple workflows that enable you to build games, build them quickly. I'm not an artist. I'm very much not an artist. It's staggering how terrible I am at art. And so the ability to take art and input it in and get to do it at once, being a programmer, is great. But beyond that, what happens when you're done building your game, right? It doesn't really stop there unless you're just a hobbyist, right? At that point, you need to turn it into a viable product that makes money so that you can keep doing that. And so one of the things, I feel that Unity is doing very well is okay, you've made your game, now what? How are you going to make money? How are you going to advertise it? How are you going to, analyze what your players are doing so that you can fix pain points? You can know about the pain points even if no one else does. Like if I'm a player and I'm like, man, I just can't get past level 4. Okay, that's fine, but if I'm the game dev and I'm looking and seeing no one's getting past level 4, then maybe there's a problem there, right? And so these services, these abilities to integrate with all these different marketplaces and stuff like that, all these different platforms, is something that we really value. And hopefully it's something that you all value as well.
Yeah, those are super important. And on top of that, in the past when I've looked at game engines for evaluation purposes, when you're starting up new projects, teams look at what's going on. The artists want certain features, the designers want certain features, the engineers want certain features. And it is difficult to appease them all, but you have to kind of look at the project. What is the project going to require? Does the engine support the platform you want to actually put the game out on? Do you have aspirations that once that platform, you get out of that platform, you want to go to another platform, so you don't be stuck with it? It was always a PC or so. Also, does it have the kind of performance that you want? Like you have these aspirational dreams of a fantastic, the best game anyone's ever seen. Can you actually achieve that with this product? And like Mike said, once you actually do get it out, it's all great. The money's just rolling in, luckily. Can you actually update the product? Can you actually advertise it properly? Can you does it have good telemetry support in it so you can kind of tell what's going on and make the investment?
Okay. By the way, rather than save any questions to the end, if people have questions they'd like to bring up while we're discussing this, feel free to just jump in or raise your hand and ask your questions. I think having an interactive conversation will be more productive. Mike, one of the things that you mentioned to me when we were discussing this earlier is that in general people should stick with what they know, right? Like if they're already using an engine they're comfortable with that, that's typically the right way to go. In what conditions do you think that's maybe not the best advice?
Well, I didn't really mean it like I said. So one of the things I was talking about earlier is that a lot of times if you have a team that's predominantly one technology, it can be very costly to switch to new tech, right? And we all know this. Some of the most expensive parts of making games is payroll, right? When you have larger teams. And so you have to keep paying people, right? And so what I was saying is sometimes, right, you look at a technology and you say, we know this technology, we can build an application or a game with this technology. And so, yeah, we have some pain points, but the cost of moving away to get rid of those pain points and then discovering what new pain points exist on the other side is sometimes not worth it. That being said, sometimes the pain points are great enough, or there is a certain feature that you need that is just not there. And in those situations, that completely justifies, the cost of the time of learning new tech. But one of the things that happens a lot is you get a lot of people that's thinking, grass is always greener, grass is always greener. I'm terrible at this. I can't make decisions about anything because I'm always thinking, I'm missing out. And at some point, it comes down to the fact that sometimes you're running a business, unless you're a hobbyist, right? Sometimes you have to make money to keep the doors open so you can keep producing your vision, your entertainment, your experiences. And so you have to really analyze, okay, these are the things I don't like. This is how much it's going to cost to transition. And is it worth it? And if the answer is yes, then it is, obviously. And the answer is no, it's no. I think a lot of people dive into this choice. They say, I didn't like this feature, or I don't like this thing, so I'm going to switch. And then they get to the other side and they hit this stopping point where they're like, wait a minute, how do I do this now? I knew how to do this, but now I don't. And what's this thing? Oh, that's not what I thought I would do. And I can't do this anymore? I really should have thought about this a lot more. And a lot of people do that. And it becomes problematic. And so, it's an interesting time when you have people obviously from different technologies, many great engines available, right? I'm a game developer first. The industry and the market as it is right now is great for devs. And a lot of people, they don't stop to really think, okay, what do I know? What's my knowledge worth? Because you take your own knowledge for granted. You take your team's knowledge for granted. The fact that you know a technology, a lot of people don't even value that. They just think, we'll just learn a new technology. And the value that you have, the knowledge you have, is incredibly valuable, not only in some mystic monk way, but also in dollars, because how much time it will take, not only to learn new tech, but how much time did it take you to learn the tech to the level that you have.
And that's why, for anybody who's making a new engine, it's up to them to come up with a good set of compelling reasons. Because there have to be those reasons for anybody. Otherwise, I can't even with a straight face say you should switch or not something else. We have to offer features and techniques or workflows or something that actually save you time and improve your product. Otherwise, it's not worth it.
So I think that's a good segue into one of my other questions, which is, and this is, I guess, mainly for you, although feel free to chime in as well. As a relative newcomer to this space, what unique value do you feel like MaxPlay offers that wasn't there previously?
Well, we spent a lot of time on this because internally we go, wow, why would I want to change or give an engine? So we kind of hung a few pillars as to what would make the most sense. It would be improving workflows in general, reducing the cost of change, the ability for, like, an example is in our engine, when you're working in Maya, you can slate a viewport directly that uses the game engine, and as you're editing things in Maya, we're as fast as possible transmitting that data to it, and the artist sees what it looks like in the game engine on the target device. That just saves the time of having to sync the thing, check things in, somebody makes a build a month later, then complains about the engine. Things like that. So we're constantly looking at that. We also wanted to make the engine be as fast as possible. So we had, again, the luxury of architecting the multi-core runtime to take advantage of multi-core processors pretty much better than anybody else can, because we've been able to start from scratch on it. And we can make it very fast. On top of that, we've also made it so that since we've added collaboration, pragmatic, strategic collaboration, so that people can actually work together. Sometimes talk about like Google Docs for games, but it's more than that. It has good controls on it, so that you can invite people in quickly, whether or not they're sitting at the table next to you and work collaboratively, or they can be working from home if their dog's sick or something, and you can actually see what each other's doing and work well, but also not destroy the whole main line. You can work together in a nice work set, put it in, and it's all done. So that, again, it just makes it so you're working faster. You don't have to worry about like you see in some other engine flows that are more traditionally file-based versus being SaaS-based like ours. You see people having to basically save a project, put it on a thumb drive or send it on the network, give it to somebody else, they can open it up, or they basically make somebody the integration captain. He's the one person who basically puts all the artwork in. So it's things like this. We just kind of examine what we in our team, things we've worked on for the last 20-some-odd years, and how can we just make things better this year. So that's really where we're at on, just trying to make it easier to develop.
So I shouldn't use Dropbox as my source control?
You see the security on it now.
You'd be amazed how many people do that. Don't do that, by the way, in case that's you. I'm not going to do it, just saying that.
So, touching on something that you mentioned, I think people with game engines, they think a lot about the graphics side, but, and this is going to sound self-serving, but
we also have all the best graphics.
On the CPU side, there are a lot of things that can be done with a high-end CPU that can't be done with a lower baseline model. And we find a lot of developers have trouble like fully taking advantage of that. I know that with MaxPlay, that's something you looked at a few recent improvements here. Could you talk a little bit about what these engines can provide to you in terms of fully taking advantage of the hardware that's available in a user system with and what level of effort that requires from the developers?
So when we're talking about fully taking advantage of any system, right? One of the things, with Unity, one of our greatest strengths, and some people can see it also as weaknesses, is that we have all of these platforms, right? What that means is a lot of times our systems are a little bit more generic, right? And they need to be to cover like 22 some platforms that we support. And so a lot of times to get into optimization, Unity has optimization tools inside. We've got profilers and debuggers, and actually some of the Intel stuff I saw earlier was like pretty awesome, and it looks a lot like some of the tools that we have, only much more ingrained on the device. And one of the best things in my mind about Unity specifically is that it's so extendable, right? So it's not really our editor, it's yours, right? Just make the changes, all these different workflows that you need to take advantage of what you want. That's a great plus. That is, like anything, a two-sided coin, because a lot of times to get into that really specific stuff, you have to extend the engine. A lot of times you have to figure out what's important to you, what workflows you need that are lacking, and you need to add them, right? And the fact that you can is great. The fact that you can is sometimes not so great, and requires quite a bit of technical knowledge to really to read the most out of it. And that's not just the case for CPUs, but GPUs and everything, memory management and all that stuff as well. And I think the same can be said for any piece of technology, even though we heard MaxPlay has the best graphics, as you just stated there.
all of the graphics.
All of the graphics. Like all stuff in graphics. It's amazing. But a lot of times, you get out what you put in, and I think that's true for most technology, where you have to really dig in and stuff like that. And we have pre-processes, post-processes, and all these different buffers and all these things you can do, and I'm not going to get into all that stuff, but we have the ability to tap into and optimize and change a lot of things that sometimes takes a little bit of work, but really gives you a lot of power and grain control.
So in our case, we want to do all the same things that you're talking about there. But one of the things we started with when we started from scratch was we looked at we ourselves profiled the various engines that are out and looked at them and saw we knew that there are techniques for doing multi-core work that aren't generally done. So the multi-core things that we are doing are not rocket science, but they're pragmatic designs that are based on more modern DSP architecture. That meaning we actually just parallelize the work. There's a lot of time that's being spent on the CPUs that we can take advantage of. That's being wasted either by spin locking or waiting on locks. So our system is fundamentally designed so that it's as fast as it can be. All systems that we build all take advantage of that stuff automatically across the years. When people do ask us, they go, well, okay, well, what's going to happen if I want to make some systems that are not really multi-core friendly? Well, you can control it and add those systems into ours and actually take advantage of the same systems if you wish. Or if not, you can actually just take advantage of the very solid foundation that we have that runs really fast, have one small area of your frame that's slower, and then go back to being fast again. The overall that gain is a tremendous win in performance. And that's one of the reasons why we were able to do this. We are not on 22 platforms. That does help us on this. But our intention is that we want to actually pragmatically, strategically make high performance runtimes for the platforms we support, and just to have it, because we know we have to compete with Unity, Epic, Lumberyard, Crytek, all the various systems, and so we have to have things that run as well or better.
Speaking of a couple of those, there have been some interesting developments over the past year or so in regards to pricing for engines, where once, in order to get like a high-end AAA global engine, you had to shell out a lot of money, and now that's no longer the case. Can you comment on what your thoughts are in this area, what it means for the future of game engines and the industry as a whole?
Sure, it's really complicated. It's like even in the last 2 years we've done MaxPlay. As Dave mentioned, we've gone from the costing on Unity has changed around, even within the last few days. It's changed around a few times. Epic's pricing on Unreal has come down. I mean, they still offer it for higher-end developers who want to have it, but people can use it for free and then pay it back in. Lumberyard's available if you want to hook to Amazon services. Crytek has please pay us some money or something kind of system. I'm still not trying to figure out how that business model works. But perhaps it's all about services, which is a way to make a lot of money. So in our case, we're looking at what it makes sense to do. We have to, again, add value to it so that all the systems that are built around the engine where it makes sense to do pricing. So it's complicated, as Mike knows. It can change every day.
Yeah. So it is a very complicated topic. And first and foremost, as a game developer myself, I am ecstatic at the state of the market for engines and stuff like that. Back in the day, engines were super expensive, and that was one of the reasons everyone started rolling up their own tech, right? Because you couldn't license one of these really expensive engines. And as of a couple of years ago, when the industry just sort of overnight snapped, and all of a sudden was like, hey, now there are all these major contenders that are basically free, all vying for the market, saying use our product, right? And as a developer, that's awesome. That is great. And so then you have to start looking at, okay, so where does our value come from, right? So if now we're saying, okay, we want as many people to be using our products as we can, how do we adjust for that? And we've taken on more of a services role, which again we feel is very helpful to increase revenue gains for our developers and stuff like that. And we're really just trying to make great products that everyone can afford and use and stuff like that. But sometimes it does get complicated, and more importantly, sometimes even changes that are, at least in my mind, very positive, sometimes lose a bit of the messaging, and that leads to some confusion and maybe negative feelings. But amidst all this confusion, it's important to always know that we all have a passion for this, and we're all really trying to do good things for the industry and stuff like that. Messaging and products aside, we really try to make it so everyone can build just amazing software.
And the bottom line is, developing an engine is not easy or cheap. So someone has to pay for it at some point. And hopefully, you get good value out of it. And so, I've had people come up and talk to me that they love the Unity model, they love the Epic model, they go back and forth on it. But the reality is, building yourself is a lot of work. A lot of work. If you ever build one, it builds a lot of them. It's just a nearly endless amount of work unless you're making a very, very small, specific demo. Even then, it's a ton. It's still faster to use an engine than it is to build it yourself. But not as sexy. Much more sexy because this is the engine we built ourselves.
If it works.
If it works.
you mentioned support. So can each of you kind of speak to what you currently do in the way of support and how we see the industry kind of evolving when it comes to that?
Sure. So, obviously, we're in a situation now as a game engine where we want people using our product, obviously, right? That makes the most sense. And so, obviously we need to make it easy for that to happen. So we do, at least with Unity, we have, forums, we have, the online learning and all that stuff that I've been a part of in the past. But what I think for support that is just really, really amazing, especially, coming from Unity, is just the massive amount of people in our community, which is great. All of these people that come together and that actually help support each other with these questions. I don't even remember the number of the last time we checked of how many active monthly users we have, but it's high hundreds of thousands, if not like a million or something like that. And those are all the people using the product every single month that are on the forums. That you ask a question, you get an answer, and that you can't buy that. That takes building over many, many years. That doesn't just happen. And so, support features, support software, support, fill out this form, we'll get back to you, or call us at this number, or we have this chatbot. Those are all things that you can buy, right? But the community we have is something you can't buy, and it's something that's earned and built up. And in my mind, that is the most valuable asset that we have. We have traditional support stuff, right, as a software company. However, the support that we can give to the community, that the community gives to each other, is just so not only valuable, but as someone who was a part of that community even before I worked at Unity and stuff, it's actually really awesome, right? Because it's just kind of like hanging out with your people, and you're helping them, they're helping you, and you're all learning stuff, and it's really cool.
Yeah, in life, the game developers there's a broad spectrum of who's a game developer. There are people that can call themselves noobs or just starting out. There are people that are veterans. In the past, it largely was all about people that were like hardcore developers that were, insane coders and do everything machine language impossible. They loved the PS3 because only the people that were super smart could work on it. And eventually, it became kind of democratized, to use John Riccatelli's famous line, where made it tools easier that people can get pretty good performance without having to know that much about the internal, the assembly, what's going on in the code. But there are still times, depending on your needs, where in your application where you actually need to get down to the bell on things. So that's also part of the reason why I was talking about, you have to have an engine that actually suits your needs well. If you're making if you need super high performance, you need a super high performance engine. If you want the community and the learning, you can use. There's a lot now. There's a huge choice available. That way back in the day, there was nothing you could download to do an engine. It was literally like you could go, oh, here's a math routine for doing rasterization, and you can just start writing it yourself. And you just had to build it all. And I love the fact you can actually get engines easily that work. You can get really good integration with tool sets like Maya and Max, and bring data in, and just really opens it up so we have such a large variety of people that it isn't such a big barrier of entry to get into game now. It used to be so high because we were just kind of creating what game development actually meant.
So something you just said that I completely agree with is no matter how great any engine is built, if it's not the right tech, then it doesn't matter, right? You can cut down a tree with a hammer, right? I don't recommend it, but you can theoretically do it.
It takes a long time.
So the right tech is very important.
And on that note, so certainly in the past it's been the case that people view certain engines as being applicable for certain types of games, right? Like Unreal is for AAA games, Crytek is for games like Crysis. Would you say that's still the case? Are engines more generic now, where they can accommodate a wide range of games? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, obviously there are people's opinions, there are precedents, there are a lot of little things that people don't see. For instance, whether or not a game has the technology of the engine labeled on it. So a lot of games that come out might be built, say with Unity or whoever. But unless you see that made with whatever, or that logo during the splash of the game, you have no idea who made it, right? You have no idea the tech. And I think it's just one of those things. It's a battle of public perspective and opinion more than anything. Yeah, there are these stigmas of one way or the other, but there's the traditional way things have worked and people's opinions of certain tech or companies, and then there are a lot of actualities. And in the true actualities, it's a lot more complicated than that. Yes, I personally think Unity is very good for indies. It's also very good for high-end games. But again, it's a constant battle of opinion and perspective, and I think that might be one of the areas where you have a real advantage at MaxPlay is that you're so new. There are no previous biases.
There are not, but we do get asked that question all the time. They'll go, is it a first-person shooter? Is it a tile-based engine? Is it an outdoor engine? And we are largely making it so that it is basically very generic and you can plug in the kind of systems you want. But that's the way game engines used to evolve. I mean, Unreal was evolved because it was the engine that Epic used to make Gears of War and other engines. And they said, okay, this is an awesome engine, we should actually license it out for other teams. And then teams would use that as a foundation for what they wanted to do. And that's a good set, because if you start from scratch, it's horrible. But if you can take any kind of engine that's powerful and good and actually bend to your will to make your game, you're well ahead. So in our case, like I said, people do ask us all the time, what's it for? And the answer is, you can pretty much do whatever you want. We have all the generic stuff to draw triangles as you wish, insert modules, do this, do that. And we integrate with a lot of other systems. We're not building everything. We integrate with an animation engine. We integrate with different particle systems. We're not building all that from scratch because this is too much. But that gives what we want is a super solid foundation that can actually work well with our high performance underpinnings.
It's also an important balancing act, right? Because the more generic you make a piece of software, the more universally applicable, the more it lacks certain oomph in different departments, right? And that is what it is. So you don't want to make it so generic that you can no longer compete at high end, but you don't want to make it too specific that you can't compete, against many different types of games. And so it's a constant balance act that is always, it's a landscape that's always shifting as new gameplay models come out, as new technology comes out and evolves, new disruptive tech, or even, new hardware-specific tech. Like, when Metal came out, it was like, oh, hey, now we gotta figure this thing out, and all that stuff. There's all this constantly disruptive tech, and that needle on the gauge kind of moves back and forth pretty consistently all the time. And so, one day you might be the best at this particular thing, and then another day you're not. And so it's always just a constant struggle on valuation. And so if you're the type of person who just wants to label and say this engine's for this and this engine's for that, right? Then I think you're missing out on some of the real value of an industry that moves so very quickly. Is that at any given time, one engine, one piece of tech, one software, one hardware, who used to be the best at this or the worst at this or whatever, it's just completely shifted. And you need to be more agile, more flexible to really take advantage of all of the different high points as often as you can. To really, to be very successful, in my opinion.
And I've seen a number of engines purposely do demos or sponsor projects of different kinds of genres. Just basically go, look, it can do this kind of engine correctly, this kind of game. I've seen I know they've done a pinball game. All right, we would not normally think you do a pinball game with Gears of War, of course, but it can. And it was a great game. That sounds like a great game. It was Death and Destruction in pinball. But it's the kind of thing where you have basically people automatically they're trying to figure out what's the best engine, what's good for it. They'll try to kind of generalize. Well, I've seen it from this game, so therefore it must be good at this kind of game. And you basically have to realize, in some cases, game engines are very particular, but most of the modern game engines are pretty good at doing pretty much any kind of game you want to do at this point.
Okay, we just have a couple minutes left, so rather than me asking more questions, I want to open it up and see if any of you have questions for these two.
We've answered every question you could possibly ever have. Yes.
Can you give us some specifics as far as what engines are, what are the differences that there are between different engines and how does that impact your solution?
I don't think you can reliably expect us to give a non-biased answer to that question.
That's fine.
And I don't think any of us might be technically savvy enough in the other text to really make it a fair comparison. The question for those who couldn't hear is, to ask us to say, okay, let's compare and contrast the different engine texts. And I don't know that that's necessary. I mean, feel free, find me afterwards, we'll drink, I'll get drunk, and I'll mouth everybody for you. But I think up here, it may not be a really good idea to answer that question specifically.
Maybe then you say like what are the strongest parts in your opinion in what you work on, or any weaknesses that you might feel comfortable about sharing any?
Okay, so obviously, I feel the strengths are just amazing community, amazing tech, supporting so many platforms, just universal kind of approaches to a lot of very difficult problems, right? As far as the negatives, sometimes our messaging gets screwed up a little bit when we're talking to this gigantic community, which is, in my mind, really unfortunate. And then, everyone is aware that Unity's garbage collector is not good. And we're working on it. Obviously, we're working on it. But yeah, and so there are always kind of issues when you're managing your memory that you have to maybe be pretty strict on. But so I would say that. Answer that.
It's always about the main thing. I mean, the bottom line is it's really hard to make, if not impossible, to make something super easy yet super ultra powerful at the same time. That's one of the reasons why, as an engineer, you're always like, wow, if I did this myself, I can make this better. Because largely you can. Because if you don't have to support 22 platforms, or you want to, just simply go, I can spend the time to optimize it for this one thing that I'm trying to do. You can rewrite large sections of things, and throw away all the flexibility that makes it easy to use, and do that. So it's a very complicated balancing act to make something that's both reasonably easy to use and very powerful at the same time. Nobody wins on all of them. That's the problem.
Yeah. If I wanted to quickly prototype, would you say Unity would be my go-to engine?
So speaking as the CTO of a company that hasn't shipped their engine yet, I can just say anything I want, right? So to be fair, in the past, before I worked at MaxPlay, I worked at other companies, which I mentioned earlier, and often they would prototype with Unity, but they wouldn't do the game with Unity, because it depends on their needs. In many cases they did, in some cases they did not. But that was due to the prototyping practice. That it was quick for them to do, but then they would realize, okay, we figured out what we want to do, but we don't think we can actually get it over the line with that. Now that has been changing over the last few years, because Unity has gotten much better. But that's one of the things that does happen. Some engines are much more difficult to prototype. So again, it depends on your needs.
So we're a little over time, so rather than take more questions, I think we probably should wrap this up and move on to the next session. But feel free to chase any of these guys down afterwards to discuss this. And thank you very much for your thoughts and insights.
Thank you.